All right, my friends, you know it is a big deal when we come to you, not from some fancy studio or from my office or from some telecast area, but from O'Leary's Automobile. So I want to welcome you into Live Inspired Together Saturday morning, August 28th, 9:05 in the great state of Missouri. I want to know first and foremost, I'll tell you why I'm tuning in today from the car in a moment, but tell me where you are tuning in from today. Tell me what city, tell me what state, tell me who you're hanging out with, and tell me about one interruption you dealt with this week. Just one thing that kind of got you off track a little bit, a surprise phone call, an email, whatever it might have been. So tell me where you're coming in from today, where you're listening, where you're viewing, who you're with, and maybe one interruption that you got to deal with this week. And then I'll have the honor of sharing with you where I am coming in from and the interruption that I'm currently dealing with. So, hello, Jen Lilly. I had a feeling you might be joining us today. I want to welcome all of you coming in. Kim Seal from Dallas, Texas, who I was emailing with just yesterday. Kim Seal is an awesome leader of Southwest Airlines. Those are my go-to guys when I need to get somewhere on time with a smile on their face. So hello, Kim. I want to thank you for tuning in and for being part of our community. Kim, the only reason I'm not buckled up is because I looked at the video a moment ago and it looked like I was trying to hurt myself. This thing was coming up high on my neck. I am in park. The car is off. I'm fully tuned in with you. Hello, Angie Springfield Dean, my friend. I'm glad you're here. And Ann Welsh in Belleville, Illinois, where my brother-in-law is from. Nick, hey, brother. Glad you're joining in too. So guys, ladies, friends, tuning in on various social platforms and from all over the United States and over the world. Keep letting us know where you're coming in from today. Thank you for being part of our studio. If you have not hit share or like, you may do so right now. I think it's a great opportunity to do exactly that. So here's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to do it briefly. At the very end, we'll take any questions you may have, but we're going to be celebrating vulnerability. Vulnerability. So what better place to talk about vulnerability than from my own automobile, holding the laptop with my left hand. It's probably moments away from falling. Wait for that. That will be a vulnerable moment. Earlier this morning, one of my kids started complaining about an earache. Not a big deal, just, an earache. So we were able to get this little person into a physician. I'm with this little person now, and he or she said if I put him or her on camera, they'll kill me. Okay, so I'm not going to do that right now. That would not be a good moment to live stream out right now. So we're not going to do that. But I'm with a little guy. We are about 15 minutes away from walking into the doctor together. So keep this little person in your thoughts and prayers today. He's going to be all right. But vulnerability. When I think about vulnerability, I think about one of the most important books that I've ever read. It's by an author named Henry Nouwen. Henry Nouwen is a great theologian. He's a great spiritual teacher. He's a great leadership guru. Phenomenal author. But what was it about Henry Nouwen that I love so much? I think he had an articulate way to describe God's love in our life. So that's part of it. He had a beautiful way for you to recognize how you might take the next best step forward in your journey. So that's part of it. That's another reason I love Henry. He had a way of communicating stories that were incredibly vibrant. It made you feel like you were part of the journey. So that's why I love Henry. But I think the main reason that I love Henry Nouwen and I love his work and I love The Return of the Prodigal Son is because of the vulnerability that he shared on every single page of that book. He would talk about things that he went through. He would talk about challenges that he faced. He'd talk about demons that he dealt with or mistakes he'd made in the past in such a manner that you almost felt bad for him. You were almost like, dude, that's a little TMI, buddy. A little too much information right there, Henry. But while you might have been whispering that to yourself, you were flipping the page to see what he might say next, to see where he might take you next, to imagine what the journey might mean not only for him, but for you. So today, leaders, we talk less about Henry Nouwen and an awful lot more about vulnerability, For the first 28 years of my life, I told nobody about what happened to me when I was burned. It was my story. It was my secret. They were my scars. These were my hands. And I was being honest and vulnerable with you today, embarrassed by what I'd been through and sad by what I went through. And I wish they would all just kind of be covered up. And then at age 28, I received a phone call that changed my life. And hopefully for those of you who've been following us for a while, maybe yours too, in some positive way. I got a phone call from a girl. She picked up the phone. She called me. I answered the phone and she said, Mr. O'Leary, Mr. O'Leary. And I said, oh, I think you want my dad. And she responded, no, I don't want your dad. I just spoke to him. He's the one that gave me your cell phone. Mr. O'Leary, would you speak to my Girl Scout group? Would you speak to my third grade group? And although I'd never told anybody my story, I knew enough to respond with the answer that I think would change lives, including yours today, my friends listening in. The answer is yes. The answer is yes to possibility, yes to life, yes to relationship, yes to forgiveness, yes to grace, yes to moving forward and doing so together. Yes, yes. So I said yes to this little girl that day. I showed up at her school a couple of weeks later. I was so nervous about this presentation that after I got out of the car, I walked around to the front of the vehicle, knelt down, got sick, stood back up, put a piece of gum in, walked into the schoolhouse, stood in front of these third graders. Man, there were 3 of them lined up, ready to judge me, ready to critique me. I stood behind the podium, looked down at my notes the entire time. It was a 9-minute presentation. I never once looked up at those little monsters. But that was the first talk. That was the first keynote in front of 3 girls, in front of a couple parents, in front of one room mom, sharing vulnerably and authentically as best as I could what little John O'Leary had been through, what he'd learned, and what it means for them. What they were most amazed by, though, were my arms and my hands. It wasn't the story. It wasn't the slides. It wasn't what I'd prepared. It was the ability to connect with another human being at a very intimate, real level. Yesterday, and you'll see him in a moment, you'll meet Coach Matt again. Yesterday, Coach Matt and I had an opportunity of speaking in Springfield, Missouri. It was an awesome VTE function. It was a phenomenal group. 280 leaders gathered together to celebrate possibility, celebrate life together. It was awesome. But on the way down there, Matt and I had an opportunity to do some mission work. We first got off the highway about 100 miles outside of St. Louis and met with a little girl that I'd met several weeks earlier at a burn camp. This little girl had been burned 18 months earlier. She'd been burned on the one part of her face, down one part of her body, and so significantly on one side of her body that she lost her entire hand. For the entire week at burn camp, 5 days, she'd kept a sweatshirt on. She kept her hands covered up because she wanted no one, not counselors, not firefighters, not nurses, and not other people who had been burned, to see what had happened to her. It was too private. It was too personal. They were her scars, and she viewed them as being ugly. And then late in the week, some guy named John O'Leary had an opportunity to come on out and remind these kids and remind the adults in the room of the beauty of scars, of the redemption possible within life, of the truth that they serve as a badge of honor, not something that holds you back, but something that elevates your life going forward. And I challenge them not to view their scars as something that might be negative, but to view them instead as something that is indeed beautiful, that is gorgeous, that is worth celebrating and lifting high. At the end of this hour presentation in the Q&A with the kids, there was this little girl who had had a sweatshirt on the entire time. It's early August, Missouri. It's hot. She takes off the sweatshirt. She's got a little t-shirt underneath, and she comes over to me and gives me a hug. And then she holds up this right damaged, broken hand for the very first time that week, and maybe for the very first time since she got out of the hospital. I met her a couple of weeks ago, and yesterday I had the opportunity of having a little milkshake with her in Central Missouri to remind her that she's not alone, that the scars remain beautiful, and that her best days are in front of her. It was an awesome milkshake, and not because the shake itself was good, but because the company was good, because the vulnerability in the conversation was real, and because the brilliance in her eyes returned for a moment. We're called to do life together. And so after we left that little place in that meeting, Coach Matt and I hopped back on the highway. We took a road called Highway M. Coach Matt can talk about this in a moment. I think it might be the most dangerous road I've ever been on. So we take Highway M west from that place. We end up at a place called Good Samaritan. It's a home for boys who are in foster care. These are all kids who they've all suffered mightily. I'll put it to you that way. They've all suffered mightily. And we had an opportunity yesterday to spend a couple hours with these boys to remind them that they are not alone, that they are treasured, that their life does indeed matter, that although their childhood may not have been what they deserve, the truth remains that they are cared for, they are loved, that the foundation remains firm, and that their best days are in front of them. And then afterwards, Matt and I had an opportunity to walk around this room and either hug or fist bump 70 young boys, man, just to love on them, just to encourage them, just to make sure they recognize we care. We care. And at the end of the day, I think that is all any of us in any community are longing for, to be reminded that your life does indeed matter, that you have royal blood coursing through your veins, that you are not alone, and that your best days are in front of you. But if we're not vulnerable, we'll never be able to actually connect with people at the well of their life. Kathy, I'm not the one that's special. What I do is I hold up a mirror reminding people that they are, that we are loved and we do matter. And life is good. Contrary to what our dear friends in the media keep telling us, life is good. Life is good. So what I want to do right now as we're talking about vulnerability is to shift gears a little bit from John O'Leary and from the mission work Matt and I were able to do yesterday to operationalize this message for you. I'm in front of the doctor's office. We are a couple minutes from walking in. For those of us tuning in late, I'm taking a little boy in to have his ears checked out here in a moment. But I want to talk about your life and your possibility and what remains true and still within reach in your life and how you are going to step toward that today. It might surprise you. It might surprise you. It might tether itself a little bit, not to succeeding wildly and getting the gold medal, but maybe failing forward and celebrating those steps along the way. So Coach Matt, I'm going to loop you in right now. And I'd like you to first say hello to our dear friends in the community who we are tuning in with today, and then talk about a little bit of the topic that is in front of us called vulnerability.
Well, hello to everyone, and Antoinette being the first one in our community. As we always remind you, we love you and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm also giggling because I just got out of that car that John's in like 8 hours ago. We had quite a day yesterday. But if you Google vulnerability, the definition comes up, exposing yourself to failure. And John and I had this long conversation about we really need to turn that word failure on its head and call it learning. And then once we take that risk and learn and take that next right step, it leads to the next right step. And so Kim was in the chats talking about PSD and death and the hospital, and Jen, family drama, and Angie closing school already in a week and the loss of your dog. It reminds me of our day yesterday, like John just said, sitting with a 14-year-old girl that's had a lot going on, 70 boys that are in foster care, and then a large event encouraging people to take their next right step. And that's why we're leaning on you as a community, is that John and I, if you map out that day, we're just two guys doing everything we can to change this world, starting with our own and helping others. And so we're encouraging you to be vulnerable this coming week, whatever that is, the family drama, the things that are going on with death and hospitalization. Learn from that step, like take the step, because we know taking that step leads to the next right step. But too many times fear and all that's going on just locks us into not taking that step. And so that's why we're here. That's why we come in to this community. That's why we're leaning on you to do the exact same thing, because taking the next right step leads to the next right step. And so if there's anything we can do, most of you have our number. It's going down on the underneath us right now, 314-207-5010. If there's anything we can be doing to help in any way in your community, yourself, to help you take the next right step, that's what we're trying to do, because we do three things really good. We help people stay focused on the most important. We help people stay in their circle of what they have control over. But most importantly, we help you take the next right step. So again, if there's anything we can do, 314-207-5010. Let's lean into vulnerability. Let's be vulnerable this coming week, because that next step will lead to the next right step. Back over to you, Jo.
Awesome, Matt. Such a good reminder. And one of the comments that came up on the screen while you were speaking, so you probably missed it, was from Diane Redmond. And she said, it is so good to see you guys again. It's been so long. And I would imagine most of us have no idea what she's referring to. We saw Diane Redmond last night about 10 hours ago and about 4 hours by car from where we are right now. So indeed, Matt was in this vehicle. It still has a little bit of a little bit of a need for a cleaning after a long day in this vehicle yesterday. Matt and I also had an opportunity to talk quite a bit about failure. And before Matt became our lead coach here at Live Inspired. Before he became Missouri Principal of the Year, before he became an assistant principal, he was a teacher. And when these kids in his classroom used to fail, he would high five them and say, yes, yeah, yes. What did you learn? What did you learn? How awesome. What did you learn? And in our society today, my friends, if you don't get the gold medal and do everything just right, we view that as a failure. And it's never about learning. It's about messing up, man. What did you mess up this time? What if instead we completely flipped that on its head and celebrated the mistakes and the learnings and how we are going to focus on the most important, take the next right step and control what we can. That is indeed our journey forward. So what we wanted to do today is to not only have less slides, as you're noticing, but also unplug a little bit. So as we wrap up here in a moment, I'll give you one challenge as we do so. But before we do, if you have any questions at all for the guy behind the wheel right now, no, the car's not rolling. But if you have any questions for John O'Leary, or his coach and his friend, his fellow driver and sojourner in life, Matt Miller, we would love to wrap up today's Live Inspired podcast by taking any questions that might be on your mind or on your heart. So anything that is in front of you today, any challenges that you're dealing with, any questions around vulnerability or our story or the little boys we were with yesterday, there were 72 in a room. And I thought that was a lot. And it was. Until I spoke to Casey, who's in charge of this program, an amazing human being, and his partner, Matt. And they were saying, oh, yeah, this is just the tip of the spear. And I said, well, what does that mean? He said, there are 1,500 kids in foster families right now in Missouri. And there are 15,000 boys and girls that we can't even get into foster families in a relatively small state of Missouri, 4 million or so citizens. 15,000 children have no home today. They have no apartment today. They have no parent today. They have no grandparent today. They're looking for love. And so just for those of us who feel as if we are completely isolated, completely doing life by ourselves, I'm telling you right now, you are not alone. And there's one of the best ways I've always found to move through isolation and loneliness and meaninglessness in life is to reach out to those around us. It could be as a volunteer. It could be as a big brother or big sister. It could be serving as someone else's coach or mentor. Or if you really want to go all in, whatever state you may be in right now, whatever country you may be tuning in right now, there are children who are profoundly in need of a safe home, And so if you are ever so moved to become a foster parent, I was with 70 kids yesterday who are just so good. They just need someone to love them. So Matt and I were talking about that. I don't think we're done talking about that either. So stay tuned on that conversation. John Daly, just keep doing what you're doing. Thank you for that. You and your staff are doing great work. The world needs more of what you are doing right now. Hey, John Daly, you know we love you, man. But all Matt and I and our organization really does is we hold up a mirror, and it does two things. And one, reminds us all of what others are doing. Fred Rogers' mom used to say, hey, Fred, when you see bad things, don't look at the bad things. Look at the people moving toward them. Look for the heroes. And what I've always found, the media does a phenomenal job concentrating on the bombs and the fires and the shootings and the divisiveness and the negativity and the markets and everything else that is bad. What Fred Rogers' mother reminds him, and John Daly, what I remind you and my children and anyone else who I don't yet rock to sleep on a Saturday morning, quit looking for the fire, quit looking at the smoke, quit looking at the yellow tape around that site. Instead, look for the people moving toward it to make a difference and join their ranks. Any fool can point out the flaws, and most of us do. But we are called to be change agents for good in a marketplace that is longing for it. So do so in your own way, in your own backyard, and watch how that next step will change someone else's world, including yours.
Hey, John, I'm going to jump in. Jan, I just saw your chat. If you'll make sure, if we're not connected, 301-4-207-5010, we will definitely loop you in. It's exactly the movement we're trying to create, is how this community right here can continue to make a difference. And I'm glad you gave a special shout out, John, to Diane Redmond. Came from Texas to Springfield, was with us last night, helped us sell books, was the last in line to have hers signed. And so special shout out to her as we continue to wrap up here. So.
Yep. And I also saw that comment from Jan. And hey, Jan, do life together. The cool thing about our organization is, yeah, we are based here in St. Louis, Missouri. My little office is in Kirkwood, Missouri. But yesterday we were in St. Roberts, Missouri. And then we were in Pleasant, Missouri. And then we were hanging out in Springfield, Missouri. And next week we're heading to New Orleans. We're going to go down there, and hopefully we will. Hopefully that storm will blow back out to the Gulf. But if not, we'll not only speak, but we will serve. And so what we are super committed to is making a difference where we are called to go next, and then bringing our ambassadors, bringing our friends with us. So please do text our line today, and let's figure out ways to make a difference together. And that goes not only for Jan and Diane and Rana and Kim Seal, but for everybody else today on the call. So let's make sure that we are doing this work together. Okay. So Matt, why don't you get the final word, man? How do you want to wrap up this conversation today?
I think I'll add just what you said is what we're trying to, John and I are always, we were in a car for 8 hours yesterday trying to figure out the answer to all this. We're just trying to get laser focused and empower others to change this world, starting with our own. And so if you know something out there that we can be a part of, we're just trying to help. We're trying to grow this community to continue to make a difference, that not only when people wake up every day and their feet hit the floor and they're blessed with a new day, that they're taking their next right step, but then also we know the power of helping somebody else take theirs as well. And so anything we can do, I just want to remind you again, we're continue to build this community. We have people reaching out to us every day saying, we want to support you. We want to do more. And so we have the people ready. And so we need to just continue to have a day like we did yesterday, where we meet with a 14-year-old girl who's struggling, a bunch of boys, and then a room full of people to say, hey, let's continue to do this. Let's continue to change the world, starting with our own. So we can't thank you enough for being a part of this community. Again, if there's ever anything we can do, please reach out to us. And we hope you choose to have a great rest of the weekend.
Well, Matt, I began with the question, what was the disruption you faced this week? And some of us typed in some of the responses. One of the little baby disruptions that I faced was today. I had expected to shoot this from our studio and to be tethered in and to have a great slide deck and to talk passionately about vulnerability. And then a little boy wakes up with an earache. And then the doctor says, we can see you at 9:30. And then life changes. And then I have an opportunity to shoot this instead of my office in the parking lot of the doctor's office, to, I think, share not just planned content, but our heart. And I hope the heart came across loud and clear today. I want to thank everybody who is still with us for being part of not only this broadcast, but part of our Live Inspired community. A lot of us want to know, how do we change the world? Is it through our vote? Is it by a marching? Is it by raising our voice? And all those things are a little bit of it, no doubt. But ultimately, the way to change the world is with humility and then the audacity to take a good long look in the mirror, to decide what's working, what's not, where you can make a difference, and then to choose daily to take the next right step in that direction. That's not something Coach Matt needs to do. It's not something Joe Biden needs to do or Trump needed to do. It's something that each one of us needs to do in our own walk each day of our lives. So I want to thank you for choosing that step. I want to thank you for choosing to be part of Live Inspired. And I want to thank you for believing, like I do and Coach Matt does and our organization does, that the foundation is firm, the headwind is real, but the best days are in front of us. So my friends, for this time, and until next time, you will find me at a doctor's appointment here in 32 seconds. My name is John O'Leary. This is your day. Soak it up, drink it down, and live inspired.